so we can go ahead, Claudia.
Good morning and welcome to all of you participating in our first CCIRA webinar. I am Claudia Miller, the state coordinator, working with councils across Colorado.
And I'm Molly Rao. I'm the Director of Membership Development for CCIRA.
One of our goals in CCIRA this year is to support professional development through the integration of technology as a tool for learning, collaboration, and communication.
This webinar is going to allow councils and educators throughout Colorado to participate in a collaborative session featuring two highly acclaimed literacy professionals. Cris Tovani is a high school English teacher, education consultant, author, and nationally recognized expert in adolescent literacy. This summer, she received the 2017 Adolescent Literacy Thought Leader Award from ILA, and today she and Samantha Bennett will be sharing insights from Chris's recently published book, No More Telling as Teaching.
And put it up here so you can see.
They will be inviting you to share your questions every 15 minutes, and you can do that through the YouTube live chat. So we'll be looking for questions there and sharing those with Cris and Sam.
Samantha Bennett is an instructional coach, education consultant, and the author and co-author of several exceptional publications in literacy. She's an expert in long-term curriculum design and day-to-day instruction. Sam works closely with K through 12 teachers in schools and districts around the country to help teachers grow and sustain the energy to teach and learn. Cris and Sam work together with schools throughout our nation, modeling best practice teaching and instructional coaching to ensure students become engaged, powerful, literate citizens. We now welcome Cris and Sam to enlighten us on best practices to engage our 21st century learners. Take it away.
Great. Good morning, everyone. All right, are we on? Yeah, we're on? Okay, great. Am I muted? No. Okay, we're fine. All right, great. Hi, welcome. Happy Saturday morning. We're thrilled to be here, and we are new at this webinar business as well. So thank you for joining us and for bearing with us as we hang out. All right, so Molly has put a link to a little packet. Is that right? Did you put the packet link up on YouTube? Awesome. So there's some handouts there if you'd like to pull those up. We'll kind of be using those intermittently throughout the day. I didn't introduce myself. Hi, I'm Sam Bennett.
I'm Cris Tovani. A long morning.
We'll get better at this. We promise. All right, so we are gonna kick you off with our first learning target of the day. So one of Cris, our foundational beliefs is that we'll never do anything with you that we don't want you to do with kids. So to that end, we have some learning targets that we've written to help you get smarter over the next hour. So I am going to share my screen here. I'm gonna kick off with the first learning target. All right, so need my sphere. Here it is. Yay. All right, so our first learning target is this one here. I can explain workshop as a structure of time for students to engage. So what we'd like you to do in the YouTube sharing part is write, what do you already shop as a structure of time, and what are you wondering about? What do you already know, and what are you wondering about that learning target? And we're gonna be quiet for about 2 minutes and let you guys write into the YouTube comment line. All right, right back to us. What are you thinking about that target? All right. Do you have any comments in there, Chris? People thinking so far about workshop?
Yeah, so mini lessons, work time, pause, using workshop in the past, but struggle to focus on the independent reading rather than specific units of study.
Oh, okay.
And how to engage students within the structure that allows more choice.
Okay, good. Oh, good. We'll get to all of that. All right. So we are going to dig right in. If you've got the packet there, I'm on page, I'm going to switch over and we're looking at page 4 of the packet, or you can just draw a circle because really that's all we'll need right now. So remember, the target we're going after is that idea of workshop as a structure of time. So I'm going to get better at this, I promise. That one. There we go. This is the one I need. All right. So the research that we use in a lot of this work, or this piece of research that really is intriguing to me, is that it takes 10,000 of hours of practice to become an expert in anything. And that's from the Cambridge Handbook of Expertise. And then I'd actually first read about it in Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. So I'm always trying to think about, how does this research play out in classrooms? Like what's practical about it? So I started to think about a typical school day and thinking about, all right, if we're really maximizing every single second between recesses and lunches and transitions and lineups and everything else we're doing, really to get kids fully reading, writing, talking, focusing, to become an expert in all those things in school, is about 4.5 hours a day. School days a year in most districts, and 13 years of school, K through 12. So here's the grand total. 10,530 hours. So we are barely making that 10,000 hours of practice to become an expert. And we're trying to get kids to be experts in a lot of different contents and a lot of different skills. So that can either really stress you out, or that can really motivate you to maximize your lesson time every single day with kids. So this pie chart, if you're familiar with any of Chris's work or work in that workshop book, or with Debbie Miller or Dawn Graves or Nancy Atwell, you have heard of the workshop that started as this apprenticeship model. But being in classrooms as an instructional coach, I started to see this exact same pattern over and over, no matter if I was in a kindergarten class where they were learning about insects, or I was in Chris's 11th grade English class, or I was in a 10th grade AP biology class. When the kids were fully in it, when there's almost like electricity, bouncing through the air, and kids are, leaning forward, eyes wide, just totally in it. There's great student work everywhere. I noticed this exact same pattern. And this pattern of instruction anchored on this idea of work time. 2/3 of the lesson as work time, but it's not just work time for students. It's also work time for teachers. The work just looks slightly different. So work time for students, during 2/3 of any lesson, students read, write, talk, meaning of content, right? And to learn skills. That's the student's role during the work time. The teacher's role during the work time. Teacher already knows the content, right? Teacher already has the skills. What the teacher doesn't know is my kid. So the teacher's work is to figure out, kid by kid, what they know, what they can already do, and what, most importantly, what they need next.
Hi, Sam.
Yeah.
Are we supposed to be seeing the document camera right now?
Yeah, are you not?
No, we're seeing you still.
Oh, see? I thought I was good at this, but no, you're not. All right, let me put it on the dot cam. Thank you for breaking in there.
Yep.
Entire screen share. So that's no fun to see me. All right, that's what I was doing on the dot cam. Can you see it now, Molly?
Yes.
Okay, great. Awesome, thank you. All right, so this is, this represents a lesson, a single lesson, all right? And this big yellow part is the work time. So that's what we're going for, is 2/3 of the time of every single period, kids reading, writing, talking. And during that 2/3, the teacher does their most important work, which is talking, conferring with each kid, kid by kid, to figure out what they already know, what they already can do, what they need next to grow. So you'll hear that a lot, and those of you guys that are familiar with workshop, that conferring is at the heart of the workshop model. That is so true. So here's the thing about work time. When we say students are fully engaged, what do we mean by full engagement? So anytime you hear Cris or I talk about student engagement, I want this picture to pop into your head. Because there's no one type of engagement. There's actually 3 types of engagement that we're going for with workshop every single day. The first type of engagement is behavioral engagement. Now, behavioral engagement is kids will do what you ask them to do when you ask them to do it. Here's the thing about behavioral engagement. Behavioral engagement alone does not ensure learning. Sometimes it can just be, okay? The next type of engagement, and this is the one, the reason we get out of bed in the morning usually, is that idea of emotional engagement, right? We know emotional engagement when we see it. Kids have their eyes wide, leaning in, voices raised, right? They're totally into it. That's the sparks flying. Here's the thing with emotional engagement. If we bear the entirety of emotional engagement on our shoulders or on our own chests, we fry as teachers, because every once in a while, one of those kids doesn't love us. So they don't get to learn. It doesn't mean they don't get to grow. So one of the things we can do as teachers to ensure emotional engagement is to make sure absolutely there is a student to teacher connection. But we also want to take time during that work time of our workshop to build student to student connections. And then here is a biggie. We want to ensure in our planning that we're building engagement from student to our curriculum, that we are intentionally planning our curriculum for uncoverage instead of just coverage. And we're going to talk about more about that in the next couple sections of this workshop. All right, the third type of engagement. Here's the thing about cognitive engagement. There are only 2 ways to know if kids are cognitively engaged: what they say and what they make. So if we go back to our number of minutes, it makes sense that during the work time, we are focused on them making things and leaving tracks in the snow of what they understand, and kids are talking as well during that work time, because that's how we can ensure cognitive engagement. So this is what makes our job so fun, is that we are trying every single day to maximize the overlap of behavioral, emotional, and cognitive engagement for the maximum amount of minutes every single day, so that we can get to this 10,000 hours of practice for kids. Right? So that is our big pitch for why those number of minutes matter in any, workshop. All right, now I'm trying to undo my screen. All right, hi, we're back.
Not yet.
All right, so now we want to take a little bit of pause, and we want to get some feedback from you guys. What are you thinking about this conception of workshop simply as a structure of time? If you just, your only goal every single day is to get kids reading, writing, talking, thinking, behaving like scientists and mathematicians for 2/3 of the number of minutes of any lesson, any day. Write back to us a little bit in the YouTube comment section so we can see what you're thinking about this proposal of ours.
I don't know if this is, I'm not seeing anybody after. Okay. This?
No.
Are you guys writing? Because I can't see the comments.
Molly, do you see comments coming up in the YouTube? We don't see too many comments coming up.
I put one in there that you can grab from. I also put it in our group chat here in Google, but I haven't seen any from our viewers.
I don't see a lot of people chatting back.
So we have one that says, I love this model. I agree that the emotional student-teacher consumes a lot of energy. Oh, and now we've got, how do you build student stamina for this kind of work when that is not the norm in the classroom?
Okay, good. I see them coming in now, but I'm not having a chance to write to them.
Great. All right. So that idea about stamina and how do we build stamina for that work time? That is such a good question, and that is where we're going to go next. So I'm going to share my screen again, and we are going to go back to the dot camera because I'm going to draw a little bit to show you how all these other pieces of workshop feed that work time. So I'm sharing my screen. There's me. Okay, great. All right, so here's the thing about the work time. The goal is not to get kids working, so like let's say you have a 60-minute lesson. Let's just use a 60-minute lesson. Goal is that 40 minutes of that 60 minutes, students are reading, writing, talking, practicing behaviors of readers, writers, scientists, mathematicians, historians. We want them to be. So when I'm in all of these classrooms observing teachers, I don't necessarily see kids working for 40 minutes straight on the exact same task. So what I noticed were these little kind of chunks of time and these little breaks that we have started to call catch and release. It's like the rhythm of a fly fisherman. So when a fish is swimming, and we pull it out, we catch it on the line and we pull it out of the water to take a look at it. If we hold the fish out for too long, so we gotta throw. So during this work time, I see teachers utilize these catches, and these catches are to either shift the task or a shift in text, or to insert a model. So sometimes the teacher models in between these chunks. Sometimes there's a shift in task. Sometimes there's a shift. Sometimes there's a shift in the learning target, which then, of course, goes to task and text as well. So it's about the chunks of time over time adding up to that 40 minutes. And if a teacher is breaking in, then you got to make sure that this mini lesson goes shorter so that the teacher doesn't go over that 20 minutes allotted for whole class talk. So there are these other parts of the workshop that fuel and feed these work time.
Can you expand your document camera so it fills the whole screen so we can see it a little better?
Yeah. Does that help? Is that better?
That's much better. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Okay, so there are a few things that matter to keeping work time going. The thing that is very most important to keeping work time going is the opening of the lesson. And the reason this is because of the research on on purpose and the importance of purpose for learners. When your learners know why they're doing what they're doing, they work with much more agency and much more ownership, which will then affect their stamina over time. So the best way that says in the research and that we have in our own practice to share the purpose is you have a daily learning target, a daily. Now, we call it a make just because it's what tracks in the snow are students leaving during this work time to both show you and show themselves that they are approaching the target. Now, over time, we don't want any lesson to live in isolation. So this is what goes to the planning. So with the planning, we want a long-term target and a long-term make. And we suggest that you don't plan any unit shorter than 3 weeks because it takes time to uncover and these daily pieces match to these long terms. So that's the first thing that matters to student stamina. The second thing that matters most to student stamina is the conferring. Teachers, kid by kid, getting eye to eye, nose to nose and saying, how's it going? What are you figuring out about your reading? What are you figuring out as a writer? What are you curious about? What do you think your next step should be? So this is what matters most to keeping, the second thing that matters most to keeping kids going stamina-wise. The thing that matters most, number 3, is that how you sequence and chunk the different tasks and texts during work time. Do you want kids to read first, then talk a little bit, then write? Or do you want them to write first? And then the writing, then they share what they wrote with each other and talk a little bit. And then they dive into the reading. So what is the combination and sequence of read, write, talk that you want kids to do based on your purpose for learning? Okay. The fourth thing that matters most is the mini lesson, which is a big shift for us as teachers. You know, when we learn to teach and also all the books that are out there, like here's the top 10 mini lessons your kids need to know. You don't know what mini lesson kids need until you look at their work. You can't know. So what we found out about the mini lesson is it always also doesn't have to come first. The mini lesson should be in the chunk that kids most need a model. So if they're going to read first, do they need you to model the reading, or are they going to read and then talk and then write? If your kids aren't having rich conversations, maybe you want to model right before the talk time, or if they're unsure about how to take their annotations from reading into writing, they might need a mini lesson before that time. So the mini lesson doesn't always have to come first. The mini lesson can come before whichever chunk of time the kids most need it. The fifth thing that matters most is the debrief. The research says, so like if I think about the Stiggins 7 strategies of assessment for learning, 4 of those strategies are about reflection. So if we never give kids the time to slow down and go, okay, what just happened? How did I get smarter today? We're missing a huge chunk of their learning time. So this brings this section to a close about workshop as a structure of time. We're gonna just take a pause, a breather, and let you guys fill the YouTube comment section with some questions, and we'll just do a little Q&A here. All right, I'm gonna unshare my screen. Chris, come over here and you can take some of these questions. I think, Molly, you're going to put some questions in the... Chris, this is a great one for you to tackle first. How can I create quality conversations?
Yeah, so I think that's really an interesting one, thinking about, you know, starting with what the kids are curious about, what they're thinking of, also thinking about, you know, entry points, so getting kids to wonder. Lots of times I think the quality conversations for me come from seeing their thinking during work time. So if they're annotating or they're using it in their voice sheet, I try to build off of their little sentence stems. I think, Jeannie, you asked one about, oh, let me go back to the live chat here.
Hi, Jeannie Boland.
Oh, I love this comment about I have a lot of compliance, but not a lot of emotional cognitive engagement. I think my students are used to being fed the information and told what to produce. And I think, yeah, that's one a lot too, that idea of getting them to really care about what they're making. Because if I can into the emotional and cognitive planning, then kids aren't doing the work just for the grade. So if kids are just saying, how many points is this? That's a real sign to me that I don't have that emotional or cognitive engagement.
Yeah, that goes back to the 4 T's, which is what we're going to start with next.
Yeah. Okay, so if you guys go to your second target, and take a second and let's just do a little bit of reflection to that second target. We're going to go back to the dot cam.
All right.
So one of the things that I love about these learning targets, doing them with adults and with students, is it kind of forces us to determine importance. And so a couple weeks ago when Sam and I were planning this workshop, we really thought about, okay, what do we want to help you guys get smarter about in this short time together? And so thinking about your daily plans. So to just take a second to reflect back to that learning target 2. You can ask questions, something that you think you figured out, and just add it onto that live chat, because I think, we don't have a lot of participants, but I think we've got ones we have are very smart. So let's share thinking.
Getting any comments?
All right, so I'm gonna have you guys go to the second page of your handout. At the top of it says the 4 T's. This comes from this really great book by Ron Berger and Libby Woodfin and Susan Platt and Cheryl Dobertson called Transformational Literacy. And this is something that I'm using a lot when I'm planning demonstration lessons. I'm trying to think about these before kids come, but then I'm also trying to think about these 4 boxes for kids who I haven't fully engaged. So just take about 2 minutes and pick a box or 2, depending on how fast you read, and see, just build your background knowledge about what the heck is on this page.
Molly, are we sharing the dot cam now?
No.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right, is the dot cam on now? No?
No, just, there we go.
There we go.
Got it.
Okay, dot
There's
cam's
a little
on
bit
now?
of a delay, yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to feel how to get to the PowerPoint, but I guess we don't need to wait.
Yeah, it's a screen share. It's right behind this one.
Is it? Okay. All right, so just got to kind of go ahead and finish up where you are. And so,
Do you want the camera on now or the dot cam? What do you want?
let's put on the dot cam. So for the rest of our time together, Sam and I are gonna kind of dig into these 4 boxes and talk about how we're thinking. I want to hit the.
Do you want your slides?
Yeah, I guess we don't need the slides.
You don't need the slides?
No,
Okay. Give us one moment while we get Sam and Cris back. Just so you ladies know, they're looking at our foreheads right now, probably. Yeah. Hi, ladies and gentlemen. So let me see if I can get Sam back in here.
Let's get opened up.
Apologies, we're trying to get Sam and Cris back. Just give us a little time. Now would be a good time for a bathroom or a coffee break. So we'll get that back up and running just as soon as we can.
Hi guys, we're back. We're going to talk a little bit about the book. We have a lovely one here who's read it.
I know Molly's trying to get us back on. And one thing that Cris is going into, I believe, is problem-based learning experiences in the classroom. And where she's had the 4 sectors where she's talking about engaging children with issues that are relevant to their own lives. One of the questions I had on that is if you were going to use it with elementary students, how young could you really go into that type of a problem-based learning experience? And for all children that are, and older children and say students in middle school and high school, how you would manage multiple classes. If you just take a few issues that the class came up with as a whole, or let students design their own, creating a myriad of topics. From the teacher's perspective, how would you manage this? Also, how you might collaborate together on problem-based learning across content areas might be something.
Okay, we're back. Are we back?
Yep, let me hand things over to you again.
All right.
There you go.
Oh, God.
Let's just,
Sorry.
we'll make this simple.
Technical difficulties.
Did I lose?
All right, Cris is gonna.
I lost the video.
All right, well, don't worry about that one. Here, be on this one. So do your part with the daily.
Okay, hi
you want to
friends.
do .cam? What do you want to do?
Yeah, we're
Okay.
gonna just be safe and not
Okay.
fancy.
We're gonna. All right.
Are we back?
Yeah, we're back.
Okay. I can't see us on the YouTube though, so
Okay.
we can see the chat.
All right.
Okay,
that's
so
good.
I'm just gonna start with text, and so for me, and I think probably because had lots of years working with struggling readers. I'm also gained lots of experience with English language learners. So there's a unit that Sam and I did last week in San Jose, and it was around civil rights. I had done a little bit of work with what was happening with Colin Kaepernick, and wanted me to begin the unit and make some connections. So I'm just going to show you some of the text that I brought for kids to choose to get them talking about the topic and asking questions. So, you know, first one was just a quote.
All right, hold on. I'm going to share the screen with them. Okay. Great.
I'm going to go back. Yeah.
Okay.
So sometimes just responding to a quote, a short piece, kids are surprised that, wow, all the way back in the day, Jackie Robinson was saying some of the same things that Colin Kaepernick is talking about. The morning before I got there, I found this political cartoon on Twitter and made a copy of it. So when I'm doing a social studies unit, I'm kind of thinking of the Common Core literacy strands. And so thinking about what are the kind of social studies texts that kids are one of those kind of text structures. Also knowing that there was a lot of English language learners, I sort of did just, I went to civil rights and hit images and just typed out, just kind of cut and pasted some powerful images from the civil rights era. I also really wanted to focus on the Chicano movement as well as the American Indian movement because of the student population. So for kids who can't read or for kids who can't speak Spanish, here is an entry point right at the very beginning. So kids wrote connections, things that they thought were happening in the picture, but then they also wrote questions. They then, yeah.
We don't see the document camera right now.
You do not see the document camera right now. Did you see it at all? Did you see any of the text that I put up?
Nope.
No?
No.
Okay, so screen share. Share. Okay, so now can you see the document camera?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right, so let's start with, start with the Jackie Robinson.
So just a quote, simple quote right there, no big deal. The next thing I put up was the Twitter political cartoon that I found. The third piece, the kids got. Then was just some images that I cut and pasted from civil rights images. Interestingly, no one responded to this one right here. So like that's also an entry point too of like, all right, what are you thinking going on in this part? We didn't go chronologically. So we started the civil rights movement and then opportunity to move back. From that, I used a couple different, the history is great. It might be out of print, but you can go on Amazon and get it for like $1. So the civil rights one is wonderful. So the left-hand side is a primary document. The right-hand side is a narrative that explains the primary document. And the series is called Witness to History, and it has everything from Afghanistan to the French Revolution to all the wars. Great resource. So I just pulled a couple pieces of text from that. Another one I used was this magazine, Kids Discovered. I pulled a piece from this magazine. And then this is another good little series from National Geographic called Reading Expeditions. And I probably broke copyright laws, but my goal is to really give kids some short pieces of text, cut and pasted a few pages that they could then actually do some reading and writing and building their background knowledge. So I've been calling this a background knowledge blitz because kids are coming with all different levels of background knowledge. Usually I have 3 or 4 choice pieces of text that they can begin reading and asking questions, which then gives me an entry point to the unit and where I want to go. All right, so I'm thinking about time, and I want to just show you couple more pieces of text and resources. If you look at your third piece in the handout, oh, you don't have that actually. Okay, never mind. We didn't put it in because it's kind of done. Never mind. So picture books we used. I had 3 different choices for kids to kind of build their background knowledge around story. And I tend to start with story because story is, I think, what helps us care then about the facts. They have something to hang their hats on. All right, Sam, do you want to?
Yeah, so really, as we're talking about stamina and we're talking about that idea of keeping kids engaged for chunks of time, it really comes down to these 4 T's. And we're not just talking about 4 T's on a daily basis because that's really hard to sustain. We're talking about 4 T's for the long term as well. All right, so back to our learning target for this little chunk, and we'll do a short piece of Q&A. What are you thinking right now? Daily planning in order to limit the number of minutes that you talk and increase the number of minutes that students read, write, and talk. Write a little bit in the YouTube so we can kind of see what you're thinking right now. Before we go, we'll stop for a little Q&A and then we'll dive into our 3rd target.
Look at sweet Sarah. She says, thank you for taking this.
Thank you, Sarah Lindholm. You're very nice, thinking because we are being risky. It's a little silly. Sorry. Thanks for hanging with us. All right, so we are gonna, let's see, we'll go back to our talking heads here and answer a few questions. All right.
So somebody asked, I'm trying to scroll down your questions about holding kids accountable. Emily, yeah. So what strategies do you have to keep kids accountable? Actually, can we go back to the
dot camp?
Yeah, because I just want to show what we used that day.
Sure.
So I didn't actually have kids annotate on those big pieces of text because we wanted the teachers' other classes to be able to use them as well. So they just used sticky notes. And then I just tried to look for patterns from those sticky notes. The piece that I had them use to hold their thinking was just this little double entry diary. So I had the learning targets up there, and you have these in your packet. And then I had a place for them to kind of put their questions about the pictures. And then on the left-hand side were lines or facts, something that struck them. But then I wanted the right-hand side to be what they were thinking about. So kind of that so what side. Don't just copy the fact, but tell me what you're wondering about it. Tell me what you're inferring about it, maybe any connections that you have. And then to help them kind of go back to those learning targets, I asked them on the back of that sheet to talk about the targets today, how they got smarter, and then how they got smarter about civil rights. So there's a content piece, and then there's also that process piece right here. So for that lesson, these were 2 ways that we were able to hold kids accountable, but not in a bad way, not in a punitive way, but in a way to see what they know and what they need next.
All right, is there another question you want to tackle?
Yeah, so Amy has a great comment about using multiple texts and photos to access and build background knowledge turns to a launch of a unit as opposed to teachers front loading. And I think that's so true because This last book that I got to write with Elizabeth Moji, No More Telling is Teaching. All the brain research that said, 10 to 12 minutes, and then people need a brain break. So for me to try to front end load the civil rights movement, especially the ones that really don't speak English very well. So that was really, and I don't speak Spanish very well. So giving them different texts to build background knowledge over time, I think is really powerful. There was enough text that they got to choose and look at from that first day for 2 weeks at least.
Any other questions that are coming up?
Where to find text? If you're a social studies teacher, here's like a great place to go to. So this was one from The Week magazine. Just go back to .cam. So The Week is great. It's a magazine that just kind of gives a liberal, a conservative, and in the middle perspective of the news for that week. And it's a nice short text. Time magazine sometimes has great feature stories that I can use as well. This Kids Discover magazine, picture books. Joy Hakum's The History of Us is also really a good resource. So I find over time that there's sort of these go-to series that I can kind of pull text from. All right, you guys, let's go to that third target because Sam's got some really cool stuff that I want to make sure that you guys see, and then I can show you kind of how my plans with the teacher tried to address some of those structures. So let's go to that third target.
Okay, so thinking about daily planning in order to limit the number of minutes that you talk at students versus increasing the number of minutes students read, write, and talk. Cris shared a few different ways, right? Having a variety of texts, because we know choice drives engagement, and also that idea of a variety of accessible texts, right? That increases the accessibility of it. Again, conferring while kids are digging into these texts to figure out what are they drawn to, why are they drawn to it, what do they love, and then that limits your number of limits the number of time. So text is one huge way to do it. What we're going to shift to now is that idea of keys to long-term planning that help limit the time you talk at students and maximize the time that they read, write, and talk. So think a little bit about what do you think is one key or a few keys in your long-term planning to ensure that students have the time they need to dig in and get smarter about content. What are you thinking about that right now? What do you already know, and what do you wonder about long-term planning?
That just stopped.
All right. Molly, I'm on the .cam now, right?
Yes.
Okay, great. I just want to make sure. Okay, so two of the keys for me as an instructional coach is helping teachers figure out what topic is worthy of students' time, and then what is a long-term task that is worthy of students' time with an authentic, purpose and audience. If I can help teachers figure out a long-term topic and a long-term task, then all these other pieces of the puzzle fall into place. So for example, for the civil rights lesson that Cris just showed you, kind of her launch of the lesson of how she were build their background knowledge, and just to kind of generate some curiosity around the topics with the picture books and with the big spreads of photos, just to start to get them to ask questions and share what they already know. That sat within a bigger unit, right? So the topic is civil rights, but we're narrowing the case study to Colin Kaepernick right now and the protesting, but then back in the day, Jackie Robinson's integration of the Negro Leagues. And then the task is that kids will write a short, like soapbox speech about civil rights, and then during lunchtimes and passing periods, stand up on a milk crate and give a 2 to 3 minute speech to try to inspire their classmates and people walking by about some sort of civil rights issue. So that idea of this kind of skeleton and this kind of frame with a compelling topic that you kick off with in the beginning, and then something interesting to make at the end with an authentic audience, all of a sudden makes the workshops over time start to flow together. So in my work in planning with teachers, we don't plan any unit shorter than 3 weeks. So if a topic is not worthy of students' time for 3 weeks, I would say the topic's not worthy. And just in a basic 3-week unit, in order to maximize these chunks of time over days, there's just kind of this general flow and sequence where week 1, the immersion into the topic. Like, why does this topic matter? So all those texts that you kind of have a text flood and a book flood and a resource flood and a video flood. You basically have a flood of resources in this first week, okay, to try to both build their background knowledge, but also just inspire some curiosity about the topic. And then at the end of the first week, you want to introduce what they're going to make. So whether for this unit it would be, Martin Luther King filling the mall in Washington with however many thousands of people came to see his speech, or showing videos of London's Hyde Park where people are standing up and spouting out what they believe. There's videos all over YouTube of that. But that idea of public speech this year, right? Videos of that, people standing up and speaking. But like, okay, you guys are going to do this. Vision. And it's almost like this kind of sense of the impossible, like, oh my God, there's no way I'm going to stand up during passing period, in a middle school or a high school and share with kids what I believe. Are you kidding me? And we've got all the rest of this time to both build their background knowledge and build their confidence to be able to do that. Now, in this kind of public speaking thing, I would probably have a unit go 3 or 5 or 6 or 7 or even 8 or 9 weeks, because the topic is so rich. And so the idea of, in the very beginning, we talk about why this topic matters, and then we come back to it at the end, because if the soapbox speeches are here in this 3rd week, in order to get kids ready for the soapbox speech, think about what's going to have to happen on these days leading up to the soapbox speeches. So then, if this is application and demonstration of understanding of the topic, then what's left for this week? Well, it's building background knowledge, right? So we have to look at the case studies. If, for example, we're doing the integration of the Negro Leagues into the baseball leagues, and then taking a look at Kaepernick and how is he protesting, why is he protesting, and what's happening in the NFL. Just using those two as like a Venn diagram overlay of then and now, you start to see how kids are going to engage more because they have to build their background knowledge, right? They're going to read a little bit to build their background knowledge. And then you split the workshop in, okay, go to your civil rights speech. What are you going to add? What do you think is the power of protest? What's something that's getting you fired up in the news right now? What are things you're thinking about? So you see, when you frame a unit with a topic and a worthy task with a purpose, authentic purpose and audience at the end, you can start to see how these days can roll out, particularly with the flood of resources that Cris just shared with you in the middle. Right, we are going to stop talking at you for a few minutes. Just about 6 minutes left today, so some big questions we'd love to see coming up in the YouTube, and we will go back to the video camera, and you can see Chris's beautiful face.
Yeah.
And a little bit. So, what are you wondering now? Thinking about daily number of minutes, and then over a unit, over the course of a unit, increasing those number of minutes of kids doing the reading, writing, talking.
Yeah. You said something about time, task. What task is worthy of students' time? What else, though, goes with that? We wondered.
What topic is worthy of their time? 4 T's. And so I always add the 5th T in there as time. So what topic is worthy of students' time? Task is worthy of their time, is worth of their time. And then what text is worthy of their time? Make sure the text is rich and comes from the real world versus like I think about textbooks as bird food that like mama bird has already chewed up and then is spitting into the baby bird's mouth. Gross. And that's what usual textbook text is like, gross and boring. We want kids digging into primary documents, secondary documents, things that are published in the world, magazines. That's the kind of text we want kids to engage with. Another way to find great text, that's another question that just came in. Another way to find great text is just to put your guiding question into Google. So why is protest important in the United States? Put that into Google and you're gonna get more text than you know what to do with. High interest, short text. And then Google Images, put into Google Images protests in the United States and put that into Google Images. And you'll have more things for kids to talk about and think about and look at than you know what to do with. All right, any other questions? All right, well, we can't thank you guys enough for joining us in this grand experiment of going back and forth with the dot cam and the, as you can see, we're a little very important to us that we not talk at you for an hour. So thank you for playing with us a little bit as we try to figure out the best way to do this over a webinar so that we don't talk at you for the whole time and that you can participate and we can engage in a dialogue. It's been great to spend this time with you.
Yeah, happy Saturday. See ya.
All right, have a great weekend.
Thank you, ladies. That was definitely the interactive webinar I ever got to do. So I think you guys were awesome.
And thank you everybody for creating these wonderful questions, and hopefully we'll find an avenue where you can dialogue together in the future and take all this great information back to your classrooms on areas of engagement. Again, thank you for joining us today for our first webinar ever.
Yes. If you're looking for CEUs, there is now a link to a Google form where you can put in your name and say you attended and share a little bit about what you learned and some comments for us and our presenters. That way we can get you a certificate for attending. So thanks for coming. We also threw in a collaborative document if you want to share any of your thoughts or how you're applying things from today for teachers to use going forward. And I think that's it.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.